Hi, everyone. It's a little hot in here, right? So for today's message, we're actually looking at kind of a large portion of Scripture. I don't know if you looked at the bulletin, it actually says from verse 1 to 35. It's actually quite long, and there's actually a lot that happens. And so normally, maybe I'd split this into 2 or 3 messages, actually. But I'm actually keeping it together for a reason, and that's to help us kind of understand what's going on. You can't really separate Jesus' actions and his life from the message he's proclaiming. And that's what we see here. We see there's a sign, there's this miracle, and there's a message that follows it. But they're connected. So to kind of separate them, it would make it kind of difficult to understand. So I'm kind of combining it together and covering like this whole long passage. And today we're looking at this famous miracle. It's the feeding of the 5,000. And actually shortly after this, there's another miracle. Jesus actually walks on water. But the important thing is not the miracles themselves. It's the message that they're pointing to. And so here we see, the context of things is very important. Just a few weeks ago, we went through kind of the message about the Samaritan woman at the well, how she meets with Jesus. But then right after that, we see that as the town is actually coming out to meet him, he actually has this kind of teaching with his disciples about the harvest. Now you could separate those two messages out, which is what we did, but in reality, you can only understand his message about the harvest by understanding what's going on in that Samaritan town and in relation to his conversation with the Samaritan woman. So that's why context is very important. Sometimes, if we look too much at the details of things, we lose kind of the bigger picture. And actually, just last week, we kind of went through that as well, right? The Jews, they were so focused on the law in the Torah that they lose hold of the whole point of the Scriptures, which is pointing to Christ. So just like that, it's important not just to focus on the miracle, but see the message. So last week, we kind of looked at the testimony of Jesus. He shared how his testimony was actually his life. It was a demonstration testimony. And he came to do the work of the Father. But there was another testimony that he refers to that he accepts as valid and true as well. And that testimony is the testament of God, the Torah, the Word, our Bible. It's a testament of God's will concerning salvation through Christ. And as we looked, we saw that the Jews had lost hold of that. They have eyes, but they were actually blind to see this. So since that kind of situation in Jerusalem, some time has passed. And now we look at Jesus, and he's actually back up north, kind of back in the region of Galilee. And he's at this sea called the Sea of Tiberias. And it's actually named after the city that's right next to it. This city, it was actually by King Herod. He actually enlarged it. He made it very beautiful in honor of actually Emperor Tiberius. And we see that here, right next to this sea, is this mountainside. And Jesus is here with his disciples, and this crowd is following after him. A crowd of 5,000, it says. Now, we have to note that it says that there's 5,000 men that are following. Now, at this time, they actually only counted the men. So actually, in reality, if you include the women and children, this crowd is about 10,000. Some estimates put it at 20 to 25,000 people, if you include all the children and the women that were present as well. Now, that's a big number, right? Like 20,000 people. And if you guys were at the World Remnant Conference, you might have seen that, right? At the World Remnant Conference, we had 20,000 people. Now imagine that, following after you in a big crowd, right? This is Jesus on the mountainside, and this crowd is coming to him. 20,000 people. Now the reason they were following him is because they saw his miracles. They saw some of his signs. He was actually healing people in the region, in the area before this. So they had seen his healings, they'd seen what he was doing, and so now they're following after him. And so Jesus, he goes up to the mountainside and he sees all these people and he has compassion on them. And so we see following him, there likely be, a lot of these people from the countryside, a lot of these people were poor. They were just ordinary folks that kind of lived in the area. This isn't the downtown area of like Jerusalem. This is Galilee. This is like the countryside outside the city. So how do they feed all these people? Philip, he estimates that to feed these people, even to give them a bite to eat, it would cost over a year's worth of wages. We see Jesus, he already has in mind what's going to happen. When I see there's this boy who has 4 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And here we see Jesus would exercise his creative power as God. He would multiply the loaves and the fish to feed all of these people, the 20,000. The miracle, it points to and testifies that he is God. That's why he has this power. And I don't know about you guys, but in my mind, it's really difficult for me to imagine this happening. Like, I kind of come from an engineering scientific background, and me just trying to imagine how he's multiplying these loaves, I try to think of it kind of scientifically, like cloning, or I don't know how he's doing it, right? Sometimes I think of it kind of like, you guys ever seen like magicians, right? And they kind of pull a rabbit out of a hat, or there's something that's kind of in a small container, and he pulls something out of it, and pulls more and more out, right? That's kind of how I imagine. I'm like, there's a basket.